Welcome to the Engineering Influence Podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies, coming to you from New Orleans in our 2024 annual fall conference. Programming brought to you and sponsored by Bentley. Very proud to have them as our sponsor. And I'm joined today by our closeout keynote speaker, James Lawrence, who has, it's a perfect, I think actually what you did today was a great capstone to an event, because we've had a couple of speakers who were talking about, perseverance and kind of pushing limits. But your story, I think, really puts a capstone on it, because there are a few people, well, actually you are the record holder, so you are the individual who has it, to go from realizing that you wanted to challenge yourself, identifying the fact that the Ironman is probably one of the toughest, if not the toughest, tests of human endurance. And then doing one no, just doing two no, going from record-breaking 30 to 50 to 101 after the victory lap, of accomplishing that in consecutive races. And just, I don't know. Why, I guess, was it because the Ironman is known as just the toughest one? Is that what really attracted you to?
Yeah, I mean, just that single day challenge. And I think we should clarify that an Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike ride, and then concludes with that full marathon run, 26.2 miles. 140.6 miles.
Yeah.
And like I said, my journey started with one.
Yes.
Just like, oh man, that seems really hard, almost impossible. Right.
Yeah.
And then as I started that journey, my belief system changed. And the purpose of it all was to truly find out what myself was capable of, mind, body, and spirit. And man, we ended up really pushing some boundaries and some limits.
I mean, you showed that one slide of the first race, the swimming portion.
Yeah.
And, I guess, mentally you think, okay, you swim the first part, and you don't really think about how many other athletes are taking part in the race with you. And you're on the water together, and it's just unorganized chaos. I mean, and you said you were pulled under and you didn't realize if you were going to be able to get back up. I mean, how was that as an initial shock to say, okay, well, I'm in it now, and this is real?
Yeah, that was the first real gut check.
Yeah.
Because you're under the surface of the water. You've been kicked in the face. You've been punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
And now it's decision time. What am I going to do next?
Yeah.
And I think there's two options to go in life, right? We're either the victim or we become the victor.
Yeah.
And those are the two paths that a lot of people, or that are options for people to take.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people decide to choose upon themselves to become the victim.
Yeah.
And I hope people listening recognize or understand that it is a choice.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing, especially in today's society. It's a little too easy to give up. There are a lot of exit ramps that you can take. You can kind of hit a point and,
the path to giving up has become so easy, so comfortable, so direct. I mean, there was fast food, and now there's fast food delivered to your home. Like you don't have to like pause your video game and it gets delivered to you, right? And so it's just so much ease, so much comfort, and again, all of the technologies and options we have today are a blessing and a curse.
Yeah,
and we can either leverage them for good, or we can allow them to cripple our lives and bring us down.
Yeah, there's a point where it's discomfort can be greatly frightening or clarifying.
It's definitely
clarifying. And and you talked about the fact that in the back of your mind, that voice would come back up all regularly, no matter how many races you ran. It was always there to say, you know what? No, there's no point. Stop.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is the, I do a little bit on stage about how it's the bully inside of our heads, and it's the conversations that we're having with each other. And early in my career and early in my journey, I wanted to silence the bully. I wanted to completely turn him off. And I've learned over time, he's now my ally.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, if I haven't heard from the bully inside my head in a long enough period of time, dude, it flat out means I'm not showing up in my life. I'm not pushing boundaries.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, something's wrong. And so I now use it as a barometer to oh, I'm struggling with my life because I'm getting pushback. I'm getting that conversation. It's starting to spike.
Yeah.
And the trick is just learning how to quickly navigate and change the narrative instead of like allowing it to beat you down and take you on a path of like quitting or despair or all of the things that lead us to, giving up.
And it's all a question of, I mean, it's passivity or active living. It's either you're a passenger in your own life and you're allowing that voice to guide you and take you where you need to go, or where it wants to take you, rather.
Not a passenger, a conductor.
Yeah, or a conductor. Yeah, you're right.
You want to be the conductor because either life is happening to you. Thank you, man. Either life is happening to you or life happens to you and then you decide what the outcome is going to be based on your effort and involvement.
Absolutely. And I think that the interesting thing I also noted with the end slide that you had at the presentation of your family, and throughout the process, all of those races, your daughters, really pushing you, keeping you going, and noticing that, when you got when you were at the point of can't go any further and talking to your daughter at a younger age, when that idea of quitting or stopping doesn't really register, because with kids, it's that boundless optimism where there is no. It's like, keep on giving you options to finish the race.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were born as master problem solvers.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody at this convention, I'm looking around and everybody can walk.
Yeah.
And no baby in the history of babies have ever gone like, oh man, I should probably quit walking because I've failed so many times. Right. Yeah. And we learn that over time. But no, we were born as master problem solvers. And for some reason, again, it's that path of least resistance to quitting and comfort.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that becomes the new normal. But then the problem quickly becomes, the more we choose to not show up, the more often we fail.
Yeah.
And then now we have a condition because now we're starting to associate ourselves as a failure.
Yeah.
And it becomes part of our identity, which now we're getting closer and closer to being that victim.
Yeah.
And that's a path that nobody wants to go down or should go down.
And that's the point of realization. Hopefully people will make that. Yeah, you can have a resistance to taking a risk or pushing yourself the extra mile, but when that voice conducts your life, and when that starts becoming your identity as a personality,
script
that's where everything changes. That's when everything shuts down.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, from stage, I've had opportunity, super fortunate. I've spoken in over 50 countries. And literally the number one question is, how do I become more mentally tough?
Yeah.
And it's through choosing experiences that'll challenge you or create growth or discomfort.
Yeah.
And then figuring out how to navigate that.
Yeah.
There's actually a part of our brain, I can't remember what it's called right now, but it only grows when you intentionally do difficult things in your life.
Yeah.
And by doing those, that part expands. And now when real life happens, an actual situation, you're ready to tackle it, right?
Yeah.
Take the pandemic. You could look around and go, oh man, that's chaos, that's confusion, nobody knows what's happening. But why did we all handle it so differently?
Yeah.
My belief is the individuals that intentionally did difficult things in their lives prior to that moment were armed and ready with the capacity to handle that and navigate it in a totally different way.
Is this the situation? This is how we're going to handle it? Yes. And you come out at the end and it's a learning experience.
But you can't go from 0 to 100. You got to start wearing the nose plug in the pool, gripping to the side of the wall, gasping for air, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then slowly move that needle to the point where you get like, oh man, an Ironman a day is now routine. I can
absolutely. Do that. And from a personal aspect, hopefully, that people walk away from the talk with that idea of pushing themselves. Professionally, I imagine that it's also equally transferable. The fact that, you want to be in a position in business to be able to say, okay, good, we do X, Y, and Z very well, but here's this other thing we want to do, and there's a risk involved, but we shouldn't be afraid to go out and try it, because
100%.
Failure is just, learn something along the way.
Any invention that we experience today is because people have failed and continue to try to develop things in any category. That's how we have new things. That's how we have growth, is because people failed and then made a conscious decision to show up and continue to face adversity until they had a breakthrough and learned from the mistakes that they made in the past.
It's really something that, to think that, looking again, going back to that last photo, your daughters, your family grew up really around your racing.
Yeah.
just seeing that, how has that, in your opinion, shaped who they are as people and just like how they approach
great
challenges
question.
in their lives?
And I have, I'm very involved with my family, and obviously this will sound totally biased.
Yeah.
But I have 5 incredible kids.
Yeah.
And I have huge sample size in terms of like their friends and family members and whatever who didn't choose to intentionally make themselves uncomfortable. They chose a path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And my kids, thankfully, are standouts.
Yeah.
And I'm, I just had 2 of my daughters get married this year, and I wasn't hesitant or nervous at all to send them into the real world because they've participated in challenge and adversity and growth and understand that failure is okay. And I have 5 very confident children.
Yeah.
And man, I'm just so excited for them to take on the next chapter of their lives. And we attribute it to literally giving them a front row seat to all of the emotion, all of the success, all of the failures, not sugarcoating any of it, and allowing them to be part of that journey.
Because a lot of times people want to hide that from their kids. They want to be able to say, inoculate themselves from, okay, that's, you don't want to see failure because that's going to, but actually having that front row seat from failure to success actually gives them an idea of what success could be, and also what not to give up and just keep on pushing.
Yeah. And then being able to communicate what's happening with them, they grow. There's so much, kids are so resilient, and they're massive sponges. Yeah. In fact, man, I've learned more from my kids than my kids probably have from me.
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the gifts of parenting and having kids is it allows us to pause for a moment and say, why is this happening? How do I deal with this personality type? How do I deal with this complication or this adversity, all these things? I think kids are a great avenue to learn those things and become a more cohesive unit.
So I know you have 2 documentaries, right?
Yes.
So both are available online streaming and Netflix, right?
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. Yep.
The
first one's about the 50.
The first one's about the 50, and the second about the 100.
And the second one's about the 100, and it just got released. And super pumped, it was just nominated for an Emmy.
Oh, congratulations.
And so we'll
that's awesome.
The banquet is next month in November, and so we're gonna go claim our Emmy. Yes.
Congratulations. That's big. That's big.
Yes.
So what is next? I guess the big question is, you conquered the hardest endurance test that we have physically. What is the next thing that you want to try to push the limit on?
Yeah, it's a great question, and for me, I'm satisfied with that effort. Made mistakes on the 50. I got to reset that on the 100. And for me, I now have to ask myself a question anytime an opportunity or a challenge or what's next comes about. What's the sacrifice it's going to take?
Yep.
And then what's the benefit to my family, my community, myself? If I can't make those 2 things line up, I have to pass.
Yeah.
And what's next for me is truly doing this type of thing, trying to reach as many people as we can, give hope to people that have lost hope. Yeah. Our new book that's coming out in January of 2025 is called Iron Hope.
Yeah.
And that's, what my whole presentation about. It's giving people hope on their journey where they maybe didn't have it. And so what's next for me is more of this.
Yeah. Spreading the message.
More stages, more coaching, more mentoring, giving people the hope to tackle their version of whatever we did. Because you also heard me talk about everybody's heart is different.
Yep.
And so most people don't want to do a Ironman, let alone 100 consecutive. And so it looks and feels very different for each person. Yeah. And that is my hope, is that I can reach as many people as possible. Yeah. Get people to start dreaming again.
That's the big thing. I know. Start thinking, actually imagining, and like you said, imagination, like there's something that
dreaming is the greatest gift that we've forgotten how to do.
Yeah. And actually taking the time to actually follow it and just not live life like every day is the same. You look back and you're like, what happened in the last 6 months? It's just a blur because you were just kind of just riding
the same
along.
Things and checking boxes.
Yeah.
The greatest gift that people can do is to start showing up in their lives, to have zero regret. As morbid as it sounds, tomorrow's not guaranteed. Yeah. Start living today, man, because we just truly never go. Nobody in the history of death has ever been like, oh man, I'm so grateful I did less in my life. Yeah. I'm so grateful I didn't take those risks. I'm so grateful I had even my dad is super conservative and grew up. And I recently asked him, he's 76. I recently asked him, hey, what's a regret you maybe had in your life? And he was like, I didn't live more. Yeah. I was too conservative. I didn't take those chances. I forgot how to dream. Yeah. And that was so oh my gosh, how many people are living that? Yeah. To where they get to the end and they're like, oh man, I wish I would have taken more. Yeah. I'm going to get to the end and I'm going to be like, man, I laid it on the line. Yeah. I lived life, and I tried to bring as many people to the mountaintop with me as I could.
Yeah, I mean, how many stories haven't been told? How many films haven't been made? How many pieces of art haven't been produced?
How many ideas?
Not realized? Yeah, because people didn't decide to say, I'm going to take the risk and see what happens.
That's the biggest gift I can give anybody is just start tomorrow.
Yeah.
Wake up tomorrow. This is the fact. Forgive yourself for your past.
Yep.
And wake up every single day with a blank sheet of paper and create whatever that day is going to be. Yeah. If you can do that, forgive yourself from your past and show up tomorrow and every single day and live the life you designed for yourself, you're going to be a very happy individual.
Yeah. And it doesn't take a huge change. It's not like I'm going to run a marathon today. It could be I'm going to do one small thing.
Well,
incremental.
And it's interesting you say that because that's the problem that people do is they're like, okay, I'm now motivated. I'm inspired. I heard James speak. And I'm going to go make 20 changes tomorrow. Yeah. And then they miss 18 of them.
And then they beat themselves up.
Now they beat themselves up. And now what do they become? They associate themselves as a failure. Yeah. So again, let's simplify it. Yep. Let's choose one thing to change. Yep. And start doing that one thing tomorrow. Yeah. And really, this would be a great challenge for people. Like let's choose 12 things. Yeah. And only add one every single month. And by the end of the year, could you imagine the different person you would be?
Yeah, it's an entire year of change.
Right, year of change. And the next month, you're only doing 2 things. Yeah. And now that's become a habit. And the next month, now, okay, I'm doing 3 things. Yeah. But they're manageable because you're growing into that change in that individual, right? And you would look back and again, nobody's going to look back and go, man, I wish I wouldn't have made those 12 changes in my life and been patient with it.
Exactly, right?
Instead, they're like, oh man, a year ago, I quit on the 12 things I wanted to do. Yeah. Simplify it and make it a little bit easier for yourselves so that you can, because now you start associating yourself as a winner. You've created momentum and now you become unstoppable.
There you go. Perfect. So watch James's documentaries on Amazon Prime. Get his book coming out very soon and start making that list of things you can change and take control of your life. James Lawrence, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks, brother.
Really appreciate it. I think the crowd's left energized, and I think it's a great way to cap off the program.
Good, man. Thank you.
Fantastic. And again, this has been Engineering Influence Podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies. We'll see you next time.